News Center 7 uncovered new details about a story we first reported on in November. A Bellbrook dog named Blue died when Bellbrook police and Greene County Animal Control caught him. Here's body camera video showing the day that happened where the dog appeared dead. Blue's owner claimed animal shelter employees acted inappropriately and Blue should have never died. News Center 7's Mike Campbell got a copy of an independent report county administrators asked for.
The dog's death happened in late October and caused a lot of controversy in the community. Greene County actually commissioned an independent report about the dog's death. It unveils a lot of information that hadn't been public before.
Female is okay. The male's the one that's been growling at me.
Body camera video from Bellbrook police officers show them telling a Greene County Animal Control officer about a dog that had been reported loose and accused of biting someone. Now the dogs, including the 100-pound male named Blue, were in a backyard. The animal control officer, or ACO, went into a neighboring yard and slid a catch pole over the dog's neck. Here's the disagreement between the two. The dog's owner told us she believes the catch pole's cable tightened on her dog and choked him to death. But the investigation, conducted by the director of the TCSU, an interdepartment police agency serving Dayton's south suburbs, shows something else. The dog's necropsy was conducted at the Ohio State University Veterinary School, and the report reads that the death of Blue was listed as natural causes. This meant there were no signs of strangulation or any kind of abuse to the dog. One Bellbrook officer told the investigator that she could see a small gap of the loop under Blue's neck. It was not tight. A neighbor where the confrontation unfolded said he could actually see the loose space around the dog's neck. Both the body camera video and the various witness statements indicated that Blue started to twist and pull when the catch pole was looped around his neck and that he dropped within 20 seconds. The report also indicated the dog's temperature was 160 degrees even 40 minutes after he first dropped to the ground. The report said that a dog's normal temperature is between 101 and 102.5. In conclusion, the report's author wrote that there is no evidence that indicated a reasonable person would conclude that the ACO was intentionally pulling the cable to the catch pole tighter or the pole itself to inflict any kind of pain or injury to the dog. The report's conclusion indicates that there is no evidence to find that the animal control officer did anything to cause the dog's death and that any potential charge of cruelty to animals against her is unfounded. In Xenia, Mike Campbell, News Center 7.